Lyrian stepped into the interrogation chamber with the steady confidence of someone who had never needed to doubt her own strength. Yet her ears twitched the moment the door sealed behind her, betraying the flicker of nerves she refused to acknowledge. The human sat on the suspended chair at the center of the room, legs crossed, hands resting casually on the glowing restraints that, by all calculations, should have intimidated him. Instead, he looked like he was evaluating the comfort level of a lounge seat and silently judging it. When he lifted his eyes toward her, she felt an unexpected jolt in her chest, as if he had caught her thinking something she should not admit even to herself. "So," he said, tilting his head, "is this the part where you tell me resistance is futile? Because if so, I have a whole speech prepared about how terrible I am at following instructions." His tone was light, almost cheerful, and she hated the way it chipped at the atmosphere she had intended to maintain. Interrogations were supposed to be controlled, predictable, intense. They were definitely not supposed to involve a human who smiled at her as though he had wandered into the wrong appointment. She circled him with deliberate slowness, letting her boots echo on the polished metal floor. "You are a prisoner of the Velari Dominion," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Your ship trespassed into restricted space." He nodded sagely. "Yes, well, the navigation AI said it was a scenic route. Next time I'll complain to customer support." Then he leaned forward slightly. "Do you Velari have customer support? Because if you do, the furniture here definitely needs a review. 1 star, too glowy." Her ears twitched again traitorously. "These are high-security restraints," she said. "They are not glowy. They are energy field containment bands calibrated to squeeze my wrists like an over-enthusiastic massage chair," he offered. "Very effective, but my fingers are starting to tingle, and I'm not sure if that's part of the experience." Lyrian exhaled slowly, reminding herself that she was in control. She was always in control. But as she stepped closer, she noticed something unsettling in his expression: awareness. He studied her with the calm curiosity of someone who had nothing to lose, someone who saw past the armor of her reputation and into the quiet spaces she kept hidden. She straightened her posture, refusing to let him see the ripple of discomfort his gaze stirred. "I am here to question you," she said, "not to listen to jokes." "Then you're in the wrong room," he replied, "because jokes are all I have left. Well, jokes and a mild sense of self-preservation." She should have ignored that. Instead, she felt the corners of her mouth threaten to lift, and she immediately tightened her jaw. She activated the holographic interface beside her, projecting rotating data around him. "State your name." "Jonas," he said. "Explorer, occasional disaster, and proud owner of 2 functioning kidneys, which I mention in case you aliens are into collecting them." She blinked at him. "We do not collect kidneys." "Good, I get attached to mine." The worst part was that she could feel humor creeping beneath her seriousness like a crack in a hull plate, letting in light where there should have been none. She tried to refocus. "Jonas, your ship's readings suggest you were gathering intelligence." "I was gathering samples," he corrected. "Specifically meteor dust. Specifically meteor dust that turned out to be mildly radioactive. So, you know, it's probably for the best you caught me before I glowed in the dark." "You are attempting to deflect." "No, I'm attempting not to panic. Humor is cheaper than therapy." She stared at him, trying to decide whether he was incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Most prisoners broke quickly under the pressure of her presence, but Jonas looked at her as if she were simply another person in the room. The thought unsettled her more than she cared to admit. She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the steady rise and fall of his breath. "Why are you not afraid of me?" she asked before she could stop herself. He shrugged lightly. "Should I be?" She hesitated long enough for him to catch it. "That's what I thought," he said softly, not gloating, just observing. "You're strong, very strong, but strength doesn't mean you're here to hurt me." Then, with the smallest smile, "Besides, if you wanted to, you probably wouldn't bother with the glow bracelets." Her ears twitched again. This time she didn't bother to hide it. He was dangerous, not because he was a threat, but because he listened, because he saw her. And because, for the first time, she found herself questioning whether her power meant anything in a room where a human prisoner sat calmly, and made her feel more exposed than any battle ever had. Lyrian told herself she was returning to the interrogation chamber to regain control of the situation, but the truth followed her like a stubborn shadow. Her ears already twitched before she stepped inside, as if anticipating the human's voice, and she had to take a steadying breath before the door slid open. Jonas sat exactly where she had left him, except now he was humming, off-key, enthusiastically, and with the kind of confidence usually found in beings who had never been told they were terrible at humming. He brightened when he saw her. "Ah, my favorite interrogator. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten me. Very rude, by the way. I even practiced new material." "You will not need new material," she said, but the firmness she intended softened somewhere on the way out. She approached the control console and pretended not to notice his grin. "We are resuming questioning." "Before we do," he said, lifting his restrained hands, "small request. Could you adjust the bands? They keep buzzing. I'm starting to feel like a pet in a novelty shock collar." "They are not shock collars." "Then they're malfunctioning very impressively." She sighed and made a microscopic adjustment to the field strength. He wiggled his fingers experimentally, then nodded with mock solemnity. "Ah, excellent. 5 stars, much less tingly." Her ears betrayed her again with a faint flick. "Jonas, your cooperation is essential." "I'm trying," he said. "It's just that interrogation is stressful, and when I'm stressed, I talk. And when I talk, it's usually nonsense. You're basically encouraging nonsense by standing there looking all intense." "I am not intense." "You are absolutely intense. In a majestic, intimidating, long-eared kind of way." She opened her mouth to object, then promptly closed it. "We are not here to discuss my ears." "That's a shame, they're excellent." Her control cracked for a heartbeat. A laugh threatened to climb out of her chest, and she barely swallowed it. She pulled up the holographic interface again, filling the air with rotating diagrams of his ship. "Your vessel contained encrypted files. Explain their purpose." "Those? Oh, those are my cooking notes." "Cooking notes do not require encryption." "You haven't tasted my cooking," he said gravely. "Some things must be protected for the good of the galaxy." He said it so sincerely that she stared at him, unsure if he was joking. He winked, which did not clarify anything. She moved closer, her voice quieter. "Jonas, you must understand the seriousness of your situation." "I do," he said, and for a moment his humor faded. "But panic won't help either of us, so I choose whatever this is: humor, coping, survival through bad jokes." She expected relief, yet something in his steadiness unsettled her more than his jokes. "You should be afraid," she said softly. "Are you?" he asked. Her breath stilled, and for a moment she forgot every rule she'd ever been taught. No prisoner had ever asked her that. No one had ever even considered the question, as if her strength exempted her from emotions entirely. He watched her closely, not as a threat, not as prey, but as someone trying to understand her. "Because if you are," he continued, "you don't have to pretend you are, not with me." "That is inappropriate," she said quickly. "Probably," he admitted, "but it's true." Silence settled between them, not heavy but strange, unfamiliar. Lyrian felt her composure bending like a pressure hull under an unexpected current. She moved to reset the projector, needing a distraction, but Jonas spoke again before she could. "You know," he said lightly, "if you ever want to talk about your job stress, I'm very good at listening. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Literally. This is an interrogation, not a bonding exercise. Can it be both?" She glared at him, but it lacked its usual bite. "You are impossible. And yet here you are." Her ears flicked so sharply she was certain he noticed. She turned away, but she could still feel his attention, warm and steady, as if he were trying to pull honesty out of her without force. It was infuriating, it was disarming, it was confusing. She gathered herself. Jonas, answer the original question. He nodded seriously. All right, my mission wasn't espionage. I wasn't collecting intel for anyone. I was charting unstable routes, trying to map safe passages. Your Dominion doesn't share navigational data with outsiders. People get lost. People die. I thought maybe I could help. She blinked. That was not the answer she expected. Not the answer she was prepared for. And, he added, I might have been slightly overconfident in my piloting skills. Slightly. Severely. This time the laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Light and brief, and utterly compromising. Jonas smiled, not victorious, not smug, just gentle. And in that moment Lyrian realized she was no longer questioning him. She was questioning herself, her certainty, her training, and the unsettling truth that this human, sitting bound before her, had already slipped past her defenses with nothing more than honesty, stubborn calm, and humor sharp enough to dent even a Velari warship. When Lyrian entered the chamber for the final time, she felt every step as if the gravity had thickened. Jonas looked up from the holographic puzzle she had allowed him to play with, technically against protocol, but he had promised not to rewire the station, which she suspected he actually could have done if sufficiently bored. He smiled when he saw her, and the twist in her chest returned, annoying and familiar. Judging by your face, he said, either I'm finally being released or you brought worse furniture. Neither, she replied, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. She dismissed the puzzle with a wave, and he sighed dramatically as it vanished. The council has issued an order. Let me guess, he said. They want my impeccable cooking notes. They want you interrogated by force. Jonas's eyebrows rose. Well, that escalated. Did they at least consider that I'm fragile and prone to melodrama? This is not humorous. It's a little humorous. Jonas, she said quietly, I have been assigned to carry out the procedure. He blinked. But you don't even like making my restraints tingle. That is not the point. It kind of is. She looked away, her ears dipping, an expression she rarely permitted in front of anyone. If I refuse, I will be removed from command, possibly imprisoned. And if you obey. He didn't finish the question. He didn't need to. She sat opposite him, closer than regulations allowed. The energy bands glowed softly between them, humming like a second heartbeat. Lyrian, he said gently, I meant what I told you before. I wasn't spying. I was trying to help people not die horribly in space. You can't let them tear me apart just because they don't understand sarcasm. Her lips nearly curved. This is not about sarcasm. Everything is about sarcasm. Despite everything, she breathed a small laugh, but it faded quickly. I cannot protect you, not openly. Then do it openly anyway, he said with a shrug. Worst case, we both end up in trouble. I look terrible in prison orange, by the way. Humans do not wear orange in Velari detainment. Oh good, I was worried. She stared at him, fighting the rising swell of something she didn't have a word for. Something that softened her strength instead of sharpening it, something she had never allowed herself to feel. You don't fear me, she whispered. You never did. Oh, I feared you constantly, he said, just not for the reasons you think. She frowned. Explain. I was afraid of what you were carrying alone, he said, and afraid you'd never let anyone see it. And maybe, he added softer, afraid you'd never notice I saw it. The admission hit her like a shift in gravity. Jonas watched her carefully, not pushing, simply offering space, something she realized she had never been offered in her entire life. She straightened, decision crystallizing. I am not executing the order, she said. And if they remove me, so be it. He let out a breath. Good, because I had no backup plan. Unless you count crying, I cry very heroically. You will not need to cry, she said, but you will need to run. Oh, less heroic crying. More sprinting. She disabled the restraints with an override code only commanders possessed. Jonas stared at his free hands, then at her. You realize you're committing treason. Yes, she said. And you are escaping with the assistance of an officer who was supposed to break you. He stepped closer, cautious yet certain. Thank you. The words warmed her in a way battle victories never had. She led him through dim maintenance corridors, her badge disabling locks, alarms, surveillance. She moved with precision, but Jonas followed with the easy trust of someone who had already decided she would get him through this. As they reached the hangar access, he said, "You know, after this I officially owe you one, maybe two, possibly several." "You owe me nothing," she said. Then, after a moment,